Incoming transmission. This is Commander Pharaoh. Can you hear me? Good. Listen closely, ladies and non-ladies. According to the Rebel Alliance, we are Scion Group, but all the pilots just call it Mud Group due to the rough accommodations. We're supposed to operate 2 squadrons, red and blue. The thing is, while we've been able to acquire enough ships and parts, skilled pilots has been another matter. We had to cannibalize all of the Blue Squadron pilots in order to keep Red Squadron operational. That's where you come in. The Rebellion finally deemed fit to send some replacements, so you're going to be starting Blue Squadron back up. A word of warning, our techs can probably repair your ship or steal a new one if it comes to that, but I wouldn't bet on it. If you lose your ship, you might need to borrow one of the Z95s until we can get it back up and running. They're not as advanced, but they will usually fly and shoot straight. We also have a decent inventory of spare ion torpedoes, so you can help yourself to those. Good hunting, and welcome to the Rebellion, pilots. And welcome to the channel, everyone. These will be some stories of our HotAC campaign, Shadows of the Rebellion. There are going to be 2 additional rules on this HotAC campaign on top of the standard ones. The first rule is rushed salvage versus careful salvage. Whenever a pilot loses their ship, they can opt to roll on the table as normal. Obviously, these have some pretty severe consequences, especially if you're in hotly contested space. However, the pilot can also choose to do careful salvage in air quotes. If a pilot does careful salvage, they do not have to roll on the table and thus do not risk losing experience or equipment. However, they must fly a Z95 in their next mission, and the only upgrades and skills they can take with them are their pilot ability, elite pilot talents, and force powers. Losing a Z95 on a mission does not force a roll on the chart. However, obviously Z95s are somewhat understated compared to the normal ships, so completing a mission in a Z95 will be more difficult. After you complete a single mission in a Z95, you can go back to your normal ship with all of your upgrades installed. The second rule we're running is the Convoy Raiders rule. The Convoy Raiders rule allows all pilots to have access to ion torpedoes. The torpedoes can be swapped out for other upgrades at no cost at mission start. You can also upgrade them into better weapons later. However, I wanted to have the option for ion torpedoes because several of the missions do require a more delicate touch in terms of how you deal with certain target types, and having your entire party not have ion weapons is a bit of a hindrance to that. We talked earlier, pilots, but I'm Commander Pharaoh. Just to give you a quick reminder, I'm going to be in charge of this whole group. I will mostly be working with Red Squadron, and I will be giving Blue Squadron some initial instructions until you get on your feet. You also have your support staff. Pharaoh then proceeds to motion to a young blue-skinned Twilight girl. This is Riri. She will be following you along on your missions and also picking you up should you be forced to eject, so be nice to her. It's great to meet you guys. I'm super happy to be here. I was mostly just doing supply runs with Red Squadron, but it's gonna be awesome to work with an actual fighter group in combat for once. Don't worry, I'm sure you guys will do just fine. Yes, Riri. I'm sure the pilots will appreciate all of that. We also have Pharaoh motions to a woman in what looks like bounty hunter attire, accompanied by a transition, also seemingly in bounty hunter attire. These 2, you know what, I forget your names. What are you called? The woman and transition simply reply with a cold stare. Ah, yes, silly me. Switch and sever. These are going to be providing you with information. For your first mission, you're simply going to be attacking an Imperial patrol, nothing too fancy. We do these all the time to keep the Imperials on their toes, keep them stretched out, and keep them expending resources in isolated parts of the front. If you have any questions, I'm sure he glances around slightly, support staff will be more than happy to assist you. Good hunting, pilots. Prior to leaving on their first mission, Switch approaches the pilots. See, you guys are new here. It's probably not a bad idea for you to do a scan of one of the TIE fighters, figure out what unit you're with. Always nice to know who your enemies are, am I right? And with that, the pilots proceed on their first mission. Their first mission is simply to survive 10 turns against the enemy TIE fighters. They get bonus points if all friendly ships survive, and another bonus point if all enemy ships are destroyed. Since all pilots are currently the same initiative, it was rolled randomly to see who is currently the squad leader, and Big Red 1 was chosen as the squad leader for this first mission. The opening salvo between the TIE fighters and the rebel ships went favorably for the rebels, with the TIE fighter suffering 2 casualties right off the bat and the rebels getting a good position. However, some unfortunate dice rolls and split firing did mean the remaining 4 TIE fighters were more of an elusive target, and then turn 4 happened. On turn 4, the first wave of reinforcements, a pair of TIE interceptors arrived, and out of all of the locations they could appear, one of them was directly behind one of the groups. This is an unfortunate position to be in, obviously, given as the interceptors do have powerful guns compared to the regular TIE fighters. At this point, squad leader Big Red 1 decides to try and lure the 2 TIE interceptors away from the rest of the squad, and Xyzal is also in increasingly not good shape as he has eaten several salvos from TIE fighters, which has reduced his hit points rather noticeably. Unfortunately, by the time turn 7 rolls around, the party is in an increasingly desperate position. The interceptors rolled particularly well against Big Red 1, forcing him out of his ship in only 3 shots, and another group of TIE fighters on turn 7 appeared almost directly behind Xyzal. While his squad mates were able to distract the TIE fighters from taking him out for a while, ultimately the big issue the squad was increasingly facing at this point was they were too split up and splitting their fire too much against all of these Agility 3 ships. Ultimately, their firepower was too much for the majority of pilots. At the end of turn 10, Slacks was the only remaining pilot that was still in their ship, although Slacks was able to safely jump to hyperspace while the other pilots were all recovered by Riri. While the party didn't complete any of the secondary mission objectives, they did complete the primary mission objective of surviving until turn 10. Additionally, they were able to scan one of the TIE fighters and find out they were members of Epsilon Squadron of the 414th Imperial Navy Fighter Group. This information didn't seem immediately relevant to the party, maybe it'll come up later, but in either case, in this mission, it did net everybody a handy 1 additional XP. In the after action report, none of the pilots chose to go for the careful salvage, instead all choosing rush salvage. Big Red 1 came out lucky, not suffering any penalties for doing so. Starbone and Xyzal both suffered a half XP penalty, and Meatball lost his most expensive upgrade, thermal detonators, but fortunately the mission did net enough XP to purchase them back. Slacks, as the only pilot to escape safely, ended with 8 XP, Meatball gained 8, Big Red 1 gained 7, and because both Starbone and Xyzal were stuck with a half XP penalty, they both only gained 4. The first encounter of the pilots with the Imperials showed that the Imperials were nothing to be trifled with. Even the individual TIE fighter could be an intimidating foe in large numbers, and the pilots will have to respect them going forward. However, the next mission promises to be something a little easier. Or does it? You'll just have to stay tuned to find out.